The political and administrative landscape of the United States has been gripped by a series of high-stakes developments this week, revealing a complex interplay of shifting policy priorities, intense legal scrutiny, and a burgeoning battle over the very foundations of democratic governance. From internal government shakeups to contentious social policies and allegations of political maneuvering, the events underscore a period of profound uncertainty and heightened conflict across various sectors. Amidst this ferment, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration (NOAA) saw two senior officials, both of whom led the controversial Sharpagate inquiry, placed on leave. This internal turbulence within a key scientific agency highlights the ongoing administrative pressures and scrutiny facing government bodies, even as the broader political agenda takes center stage. Perhaps most notably, President Donald Trump unveiled a new executive order titled Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets, signaling a robust law and order approach to the nation's pervasive homelessness crisis. This directive urges cities to enforce bans on outdoor sleeping and open drug use, threatening to withhold federal funding from non-compliant areas and advocating for easier commitment of individuals with serious mental illness or addiction into treatment. Strikingly, elements of this policy bear a resemblance to California Governor Gavin Newsom's existing efforts, which have also pushed cities to crack down on encampments and pursue involuntary treatment through initiatives like CareCourt. Ryan Finnegan, Deputy Director of Research for the UC Berkeley Turner Center for Housing Innovation, noted the rare alignment, stating, "I don't know that there's a huge contrast between parts of this order and what winds are already blowing toward in California." Indeed, Newsom had previously urged every city in the state to pass ordinances making public camping illegal, even releasing a model ordinance for guidance. However, the apparent convergence quickly diverges on critical fronts. Trump's order explicitly seeks to abolish federal support for housing first and harm reduction strategies, long-standing research-backed tenets that have been the gold standard in California and at the federal level for years. Housing First posits that individuals should be provided housing without preconditions, even if they are still struggling with substance use or mental illness, on the premise that stability facilitates recovery. Harm reduction focuses on mitigating the negative health and social consequences of drug use, such as providing Narcan or clean supplies to build trust and keep people safe until they are ready for treatment. John Massary, CEO of the People Concern, a Los Angeles nonprofit, warned that if these philosophies are upended, the entire structure of service delivery is going to be turned upside down. The order's directive for the Attorney General to review organizations that distribute drug paraphernalia or permit illicit drug use on their property with the threat of civil or criminal action could force nonprofits to fundamentally alter their services or risk legal jeopardy. Furthermore, critics like Greg Kramer of Disability Rights California argue that while the playbook looks similar, the consequences of the Trump action go even further, particularly given the order's lack of funding for new mental health or addiction treatment beds in a state already struggling with a lack of resources. Governor Newsom's spokesperson Tara Gallegos was quick to distance California, dismissing the order as more focused on creating distracting headlines and settling old scores than producing any positive impact. Adding to the week's dramatic turns, the Department of Justice's engagement with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's convicted accomplice, has drawn significant attention. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche conducted a second day of interviews with Maxwell, who was granted limited immunity in exchange for her testimony. This "Queen for a Day" agreement means her statements cannot be used against her in future proceedings provided she tells the truth. Maxwell's attorney David Oscar Marcus asserted that his client answered every single question asked of her over the last day and a half, honestly, truthfully, to the best of her ability. Meanwhile, House Oversight Democrats, including Representatives Robert Garcia and Ro Khanna, have formally requested a complete unredacted copy of Epstein's birthday book, citing its clear relevance to the case and expressing deep concern regarding potential public corruption, abuse of power, and failures in the federal law enforcement response. This comes as President Trump, who has denied writing an alleged birthday message in the book and sued the Wall Street Journal for defamation, stated he hasn't thought about pardoning Maxwell but added he's allowed to do it. This high-profile interaction signals an ongoing federal probe into the Epstein scandal with potential implications for many prominent figures. Beyond these domestic policy and legal battles, the political arena witnessed a direct challenge to democratic integrity. Governor Newsom hosted Texas state legislative leaders in Sacramento to discuss efforts by Texas Republicans to redraw congressional maps mid-cycle, a move intended to consolidate President Trump's power and rig the 2026 elections. This comes despite a special session in Texas that was ostensibly called to address emergency preparedness following deadly floods. Senator Alex Padilla condemned the effort, stating, "Trump's healthcare cuts to pay for billionaires' tax breaks are deeply unpopular. He knows voters won't choose him again, so he wants to choose whose vote matters." Representative Ted Lieu echoed this, calling it an attack on our democracy, plain and simple. Newsom vowed that if Texas proceeds, California would be ready to fight fire with fire through special elections, ballot initiatives, legislation, or court challenges. This aggressive stance is being mirrored by other Democratic leaders across the country, with senators and governors from Arizona, Michigan, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and Maryland signaling their willingness to counter such moves, even considering mid-decade redistricting in their own states if necessary. Further illustrating the Trump administration's broad policy reach and its potential impacts, other developments included the dismissal of a federal lawsuit against Chicago's sanctuary city policies, affirmed by a federal judge under the 10th Amendment. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is reportedly considering removing all 16 members of the United States Preventive Services Task Force, an influential advisory committee for preventive health services, citing a mandate to make America healthy again. Economically, some Republicans are regretting a gambling tax hike included in Trump's recent megabill, with calls to roll back the provision. Internationally, the administration is reportedly considering dramatic cuts and eventual phasing out of PEPFAR, the highly successful U.S. program to combat HIV/AIDS in developing countries, despite its bipartisan support and credited role in saving millions of lives. Meanwhile, Trump himself traveled to Scotland for trade talks with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, expressing a 50-50 chance of a deal, while also commenting positively on his relationship with Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, a notable reversal from past criticisms. Finally, former Representative George Santos began serving his 7-year prison sentence for wire fraud and identity theft, closing a chapter on a scandal that captivated national headlines. The confluence of these events paints a vivid picture of a political landscape in flux. The aggressive pursuit of executive authority, the direct challenges to established social welfare programs, the explicit efforts to manipulate electoral maps, and the ongoing legal battles underscore a period where fundamental norms and policies are being re-evaluated and contested. As the nation approaches future elections, the outcomes of these policy shifts and legal showdowns will undoubtedly shape the contours of governance, social support systems, and the very health of American democracy for years to come. The coming months will reveal the true depth of these changes and the resilience of the institutions and policies now under such intense pressure. In a dynamic digital landscape where social platforms vie for attention and influence, Donald Trump's brainchild Truth Social continues to carve out a unique, if somewhat constrained, niche. As of July 2025, the platform, launched in 2022, has amassed 4.36 million downloads and reportedly serves over 2 million active users. However, a deeper dive into its latest statistics reveals a story of remarkable political consolidation alongside significant challenges in achieving broader market penetration and financial stability. According to data compiled by Demandsage, Truth Social's market valuation stands at an estimated $1.42 billion, a figure that appears robust despite the company reporting a substantial $49 million loss in the first 9 months of 2023. This financial deficit, which includes a $26 million loss in Q3 2023 alone, contrasts sharply with a $29 million profit generated in the same period of 2022, indicating a downturn in its economic performance. The platform's revenue for the first 9 months of 2023 totaled a modest $3.38 million. The user base for Truth Social is notably concentrated, with a striking 84.16% of its active users hailing from the United States. Canada accounts for the second largest share at 3.47%, reflecting the platform's initial launch focus. Despite its reported 2 million active users and around 607,000 monthly active users, Truth Social remains a minor player when compared to industry titans. For context, Facebook boasts 3.05 billion users and Twitter now X commands 528.3 million monthly active users, dwarfing Truth Social's reach. Indeed, a survey highlights that only 3% of all social media users currently engage with Truth Social, underscoring its struggle to break out of its specialized appeal. Much of Truth Social's current relevance undeniably orbits around its founder. Donald Trump himself has cultivated a substantial following of 6.59 million on the platform, a figure that has seen a rapid increase of 1.76 million followers in just the past year. This is particularly significant given that his Truth Social following now exceeds 2.5 times the platform's total active user base, implying a high degree of engagement with his account within the platform. This direct connection has also had a tangible financial impact for Trump, with Forbes reporting that the app has boosted his net worth by up to $430 million, largely attributed to his reported 50% stake. The platform's demographics paint a clear picture of its core audience. The majority of Truth Social users are men and staunch supporters of the Republican Party. A significant 61% of Republicans indicate they use or plan to use Truth Social, with 27% stating they would often use the app. This strong partisan lean is inversely mirrored by Democratic voters, 72% of whom explicitly state they would never use the platform. Interest from younger demographics is also notably low, with only 7% of individuals aged 18 to 34 expressing an intention to often use the platform, and a resounding 50% in that age group stating they are not interested at all. Similarly, 66% of adults over 65 are not at all open to the platform. Despite this concentrated political appeal, Truth Social's influence within the broader political sphere appears limited. An investigation by the Columbia Journalism Review found that only 25% of Trump-endorsed candidates for the 2024 elections actively used the platform, suggesting that even within his own political orbit, adoption is not universal. Furthermore, only 2% of U.S. adults use Truth Social for news consumption, although a notable 87% of those news consumers on the app report a positive experience, expecting and largely finding the information to be accurate. The ongoing public discourse surrounding Donald Trump continues to play out across various media, from the serious to the satirical. Recently, the premiere of the 27th season of South Park drew a sharp rebuke from the White House for its depiction of a naked President Trump in bed with Satan. Co-creator Trey Parker's deadpan "We're terribly sorry" response at Comic-Con highlights the show's long-standing tradition of provocative satire, and the White House's official statement dismissing the show as not relevant for over 20 years further underscores the often contentious relationship between political figures and media. This incident, alongside the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's Late Show by CBS, reportedly a financial decision following Colbert's criticism of Paramount's settlement with Trump, illustrates the complex interplay of politics, media ownership, and content creation in today's landscape, a landscape Truth Social seeks to navigate. Looking ahead, Truth Social stands at a critical juncture. Its ability to serve as a dedicated echo chamber for a specific political demographic is undeniable, cementing its role in the communication strategy of Donald Trump and his supporters. However, its significant financial losses and an inability to attract a broader user base beyond its political niche present formidable challenges. With an average of only 8,000 daily downloads and a market capitalization significantly trailing its competitors, Truth Social's future hinges on its capacity to either monetize its devoted albeit limited audience effectively, or somehow broaden its appeal to break free from its current confines and compete more directly in the crowded social media arena. The coming years will reveal whether its political significance can translate into sustainable growth and profitability, or if it will remain a powerful yet financially precarious platform for a specific segment of the population. In a week punctuated by significant legal rulings and intriguing political maneuvers, the pervasive influence of the Donald Trump presidency continues to ripple across diverse sectors, from state-level governance and local electoral dynamics to the intricate world of corporate finance. Developments surfacing on July 25 and 26, 2025 underscore the administration's far-reaching impact and the ongoing legal and political battles shaping the nation. A major blow to the Trump administration's efforts to curb sanctuary city policies came late Friday, July 25, when a federal judge dismissed its lawsuit against Illinois and Cook County. U.S. District Judge Lindsay C. Jenkins, a Joe Biden appointee, granted the state's motion to dismiss, ruling that the United States lacks standing to sue over Illinois' sanctuary policies. In a comprehensive 64-page decision, Judge Jenkins asserted that Illinois' decision to enact these laws is protected by the 10th Amendment, which reserves powers not delegated to the federal government to the states. The sanctuary policies reflect defendants' decision to not participate in enforcing civil immigration law, a decision protected by the 10th Amendment and not preempted by the Immigration and Nationality Act, the judge wrote, adding that granting the administration's request would create an end run around the 10th Amendment. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker hailed the dismissal, stating it ensures state law enforcement is not carrying out the Trump administration's unlawful policies or troubling tactics, and will not participate in what he termed violations of the law and abuses of power. This ruling marks a significant setback for the Justice Department, which under Attorney General Pam Bondi had aggressively pursued similar lawsuits against other sanctuary jurisdictions, including New York City, New York State, and Los Angeles, arguing these policies obstruct federal immigration enforcement. The administration had also previously attempted to withhold federal funds from such jurisdictions via executive order, an effort that was blocked by a federal judge in April for violating the Constitution's separation of powers principles. Beyond the courtroom, the administration's actions are having unexpected and sometimes ironic effects on the political landscape. In Iowa, the upcoming congressional race in the 1st Congressional District has seen a new Democratic contender emerge, seemingly spurred by a direct interaction between his former law firm and President Trump. Taylor Weddick, a Democrat from Muscatine, announced his candidacy, citing a deal struck between his former employers Simpson Thacher and Bartlett and the Trump administration. Weddick's firm was among 5 targeted by President Trump for representing clients who opposed his political causes, and they collectively agreed to provide $125 million in free legal work for Trump-supported political causes to avoid a presidential executive order that could have penalized them. Weddick stated that this action by his firm helped convince him to move back to Iowa and launch his campaign for Congress. He joins 3 other Democrats, Christina Bohannon, Bob Kraus, and Travis Terrell, vying for the seat currently held by Republican Marionette Miller Meeks, who has yet to announce her re-election bid and faces a potential primary challenge. This development highlights how the administration's pressure tactics, even those aimed at corporate entities, can inadvertently energize political opposition and influence local electoral dynamics. The ripple effects of presidential influence also extend into the corporate realm, as evidenced by discussions surrounding the $8 billion Paramount Skydance merger. While specific details of the politics behind the deal remain under wraps, the mere mention of political considerations in such a massive corporate transaction signals that major business dealings are increasingly scrutinized through a political lens, potentially involving regulatory hurdles, antitrust concerns, or even direct White House interest. As July 2025 draws to a close, the news surrounding the Trump presidency continues to dominate headlines, illustrating its multifaceted and enduring impact. From legal battles over states' rights and immigration enforcement to the intricate ways in which presidential actions can shape congressional races and influence major corporate mergers, the current political climate remains highly dynamic. The coming months will undoubtedly see further developments in these ongoing legal challenges, intensified campaigning ahead of the next electoral cycle, and continued scrutiny of how presidential power intersects with and reshapes the economic and social fabric of the nation. As the American economy navigates a landscape of shifting political tides and evolving business strategies, A complex and often contradictory narrative is emerging regarding the potential impact of a future Donald Trump administration. From the boardrooms of logistics giants to the intricate analyses of economic policy, the debate is heating up, spotlighting both optimistic forecasts and stark warnings about the road ahead. One prominent voice in this unfolding discussion comes from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where David Parker, CEO of Covenant Logistics, a major trucking company, has expressed robust confidence in the economic outlook under a potential return of President Donald Trump. Parker's optimism, as reported by the Chattanooga Times Free Press, arrives on the heels of Covenant Logistics achieving a quarterly record for revenue, suggesting a tangible positive sentiment among some industry leaders who believe a Trump presidency could foster a favorable business environment. This perspective often hinges on expectations of deregulation, tax cuts, and a perceived pro-business stance that could further fuel corporate growth and investment. However, the economic discourse surrounding a potential Trump administration is far from monolithic. While some business leaders anticipate a boom, other analyses point to significant potential pitfalls. A key area of concern highlighted by CNN centers on the proposed large-scale deportations that have been a cornerstone of Trump's platform. Economic analysts warn that such an aggressive immigration policy could severely backfire on the American economy, primarily by shrinking the available labor force and consequently impacting paychecks across various sectors. The argument posits that mass deportations would not only remove a significant portion of the workforce, particularly in industries reliant on immigrant labor, but also reduce overall consumer demand and economic activity, potentially leading to a contraction rather than expansion. The ripple effect could be felt through reduced productivity, supply chain disruptions, and an overall decrease in the nation's economic output, ultimately affecting the purchasing power of average Americans. Adding another layer to this multifaceted economic discussion is the contentious issue of currency valuation. Donald Trump has previously defended a weak dollar, a stance that has drawn considerable attention and response from economic analysts, as reported by Newsweek. While a weaker dollar can make U.S. exports more competitive abroad and boost the profits of multinational corporations, it also means that imports become more expensive, potentially fueling inflation and reducing the purchasing power of consumers within the United States. This policy choice reflects a strategic trade-off, prioritizing export-led growth over domestic purchasing power, a move that garners both support from those focused on international trade balances and criticism from those concerned about the cost of living for American households. Amidst these differing projections and policy debates, the public's perception of economic success under a Trump administration also remains a subject of analysis. Fox News, for instance, has featured discussions from administration officials examining how the public responds to claims of economic achievement, underscoring the political dimension inherent in economic narratives. These varying viewpoints, from business optimism and policy defenses to warnings about labor market shocks and currency implications, paint a complex picture of the economic future. The interplay between proposed policies, their potential real-world impacts, and the way these are communicated and perceived will undoubtedly continue to shape the economic landscape, challenging businesses, policymakers, and the public to navigate a period of significant uncertainty and potential transformation. The coming months will likely see an intensification of these debates as the nation grapples with the economic implications of its leadership choices. In a striking realignment of national security priorities, the landscape of American defense is undergoing a profound transformation marked by significant shifts in leadership, resource allocation, and the very definition of military objectives. This pivot unfolding rapidly sees key players in the private sector taking on new roles, while traditional military funding streams are rerouted to address domestic concerns, sparking intense debate over oversight and strategic focus. One of the most notable developments is the changing guard in the nation's burgeoning space defense sector. Sources indicate a significant shift from Elon Musk's SpaceX to Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin as a preferred partner in critical space initiatives under the current administration. Published on July 26, 2025, this move, reported by MSN, signals a potential re-evaluation of partnerships that have long defined the commercial-military nexus in space. while the specifics of the new arrangements remain under wraps. The transition from one titan of private space exploration to another suggests a strategic preference for different technological approaches or perhaps a desire to diversify key suppliers in an increasingly vital domain. This could have far-reaching implications for the development of satellite constellations' launch capabilities and the overall architecture of U.S. space-based defense systems, potentially favoring Blue Origin's heavy-lift capabilities and long-term lunar ambitions over SpaceX's established Starlink network and Mars-centric vision. Concurrently, a controversial reallocation of military funds is redirecting substantial resources towards border security, a move that underscores the administration's intensified focus on domestic defense. On July 25, 2025, Task and Purpose revealed that the Pentagon is diverting $200 million from previously appropriated military construction projects to fund 20 miles of a partial border wall at the Barry M. Goldwater Range along the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona. This funding, originally earmarked for essential military facilities such as Marine Corps barracks, military-run schools, a jet pilot training site and facilities in Guam, will now be used to replace a 12-foot mesh barrier with a 30-foot-tall permanent steel bollard barrier, pedestrian gates, and a patrol road. The Pentagon's justification for this significant shift is outlined in a May 28 letter to Senate Appropriators, cites President Donald Trump's January 20 executive order aimed at stemming the flow of migrants. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth determined that the new barrier is necessary to obtain full operational control of the border at the training range, a site vital for ground live-fire and non-live-fire military training. This follows an earlier announcement that the Navy would control 140 miles of federal property near the range, adding to 3 other national defense areas along the border now under Department of Defense control for security operations. The decision comes amidst reports from Luke Air Force Base in 2023 noting an increase in illegal foot traffic at the range, with a Barry M. Goldwater Range Executive Council meeting in the same year documenting 7,000 known entries, 3,000 apprehensions, and the seizure of 40 kilos of meth within a 3-month period. The legal basis for this diversion rests on U.S. Code 2803, which grants service secretaries pretty broad authority to reprogram funds without direct congressional approval if a project is deemed vital to national security or to the protection of health, safety, or the quality of the environment, and of such urgency that it cannot wait for the next Military Construction Authorization Act. The $200 million is broken down into 4 $50 million projects, each determined vital by the Army, Navy, Air Force secretaries and the Office of the Under Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. However, this method of funding raises significant concerns about transparency and oversight. Greg Williams, Director of Defense Research for the Project on Government Oversight, highlighted that to reallocate funds in this way bypasses that, referring to the formal budgeting process and its inherent reviews. He added, it also raises the question of how this could possibly be an emergency when it covers a very small portion of how that range abuts the border with Mexico. While this authority has been used 21 times since fiscal year 2009 for projects like a rotary wing parking lot in Afghanistan or security upgrades, its application to a more political project such as a border wall is unusual, according to a congressional source. Robert Ditchie, a Department of Defense spokesperson, defended the move, stating that utilizing DoD funds to support the president's top priorities underscores Secretary Hegseth's commitment to spending every dollar wisely and dedication to working alongside the Department of Homeland Security. This echoes legal battles from Trump's first term over military funding for border walls, though under a different U.S. code. Mark Nevitt, a law professor at Emory University and retired Navy lawyer, observed in Just Security that the January 20 executive order more directly links the military's mission to border security. While acknowledging the administration's anticipation of legal challenges, Nevitt expressed skepticism about the strategy's ultimate success. Elaine McCusker, former DoD comptroller, however, believes the declaration of emergency and justification was strong last time, and the executive order seems clear and unequivocal. Under current law, the Pentagon can begin construction 5 days after congressional notification, with the Big Beautiful Bill signed earlier this month. appropriating $165 billion to Homeland Security, including $46.5 billion specifically for border wall construction. These developments collectively paint a picture of a defense establishment in flux where the lines between traditional military operations and domestic security are increasingly blurred. The strategic shift towards new private space partners, coupled with the controversial reallocation of military construction funds for a border wall, signals a period of significant reprioritization. The implications for military readiness, long-term infrastructure planning, and the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches will undoubtedly be subjects of intense scrutiny and debate as these initiatives progress. The coming months will reveal the true impact of these changes on America's technological edge and its defense posture both at home and in the vast expanse of space. As President Donald Trump touched down in Scotland on Friday for a 5-day visit. Ostensibly to mix personal business with a dash of diplomacy, Washington remained ensnared in a swirling vortex of political and legal controversies, most notably the persistent fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein files. This transatlantic journey, a blend of golf course grand openings and high-stakes trade talks, casts a stark spotlight on the complex interplay between the president's domestic challenges and his global agenda. Mr. Trump's itinerary in Scotland is decidedly dual-natured. He is set to inaugurate a new 18-hole course at Trump International Golf Links near Aberdeen named the MacLeod Course in tribute to his Scottish-born mother Marion MacLeod. Plans also include a round at the Trump Turnberry Course, a property acquired by the president in 2014. Yet this personal indulgence is interwoven with critical diplomatic engagements. Mr. Trump is slated to meet with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. A relationship Starmer has diligently cultivated over months, and later with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, both discussions centered on the crucial topic of trade. Indeed, Ms. von der Leyen confirmed on X that a meeting was agreed upon to discuss transatlantic trade relations and how we can keep them strong. Charles Kupchan, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and a professor at Georgetown University, keenly observed, "Given where we are in the tariff saga, if there's a deliverable, it's got to be a trade deliverable." He added that the existing UK deal was quite bare bones and needed meat on those bones to make it look more credible. Despite the warm reception from thousands of supporters at Glasgow Prestwick Airport, Mr. Trump's welcome across Scotland is anticipated to be far from universally enthusiastic. A February Ipsos survey revealed that a significant 71% of Scots held an unfavorable opinion of him, markedly higher than the 57% across the broader British public. Protest groups like Stop Trump Scotland have already mobilised, planning a festival of resistance for Saturday and urging Scottish First Minister John Swinney to cancel their scheduled meeting. Their statement underscored a prevailing sentiment: the people of Scotland don't want to roll out a welcome mat for Donald Trump, whose government is accelerating the spread of climate breakdown and fascism around the world. However, Scottish leaders including Mr. Swinney are keen to leverage the visit to strengthen economic, cultural and ancestral ties with the United States. While Mr. Swinney acknowledged the strong friendship between Scotland and the U.S., he also stated his intention to raise global and humanitarian issues of significant importance, including the unimaginable suffering we are witnessing in Gaza, reflecting a delicate balancing act between national interest and moral concerns. This diplomatic tightrope walk occurs against a backdrop of considerable domestic turmoil for the Trump administration. The outrage surrounding his handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files has dominated Washington, leading to the White House's controversial decision to exclude reporters from the Wall Street Journal from the traveling press pool. The Journal had recently published an article alleging Mr. Trump sent a lewd birthday note to Epstein in 2003, prompting a $10 billion lawsuit from the president, who denies authorship. Before departing for Scotland, Mr. Trump visibly bristled at reporters' questions on the Epstein case, urging them to focus on how well the country is doing and deflecting by listing other prominent individuals associated with Epstein. He also addressed, albeit dismissively, the prospect of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former associate, stating he hadn't thought about clemency but was allowed to do it. This persistent scandal has remarkably resonated with the public more deeply than other significant policy shifts such as drastic changes to immigration policies, social welfare systems, or the trillions added to the national debt, underscoring the unique political potency of the Epstein narrative. The president's approach to international relations, often characterized by a transactional and assertive America First stance, has reverberated far beyond Europe. In Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney has found himself navigating a challenging relationship with the Trump administration while grappling with significant domestic pressures. Despite an impressive resume as a central banker, Carney's government has struggled to deliver on key promises, facing criticism for excessive spending, a lack of a presented budget for over a year, and elusive trade deals with the U.S. His promised middle-class tax cut, for instance, was found by Canada's parliamentary budget officer to deliver only $280 in savings, far short of the advertised $825. Carney's elbows-up promise in trade negotiations with Trump quickly devolved into an elbows-down reality, notably evidenced by his swift capitulation on Canada's digital services tax to restart talks. Lloyd Axworthy, a former Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister, openly questioned, "When do we stop pretending it's all part of some clever negotiating strategy that justifies bootlicking in hopes of tariff concessions?" This posture has seen Canada increase border spending, commit to NATO targets, and refrain from reciprocal tariffs, seemingly receiving little in return from the Trump administration. Canada's financial picture appears increasingly precarious, with Moody's Analytics economist Charles Houston noting that hedge funds are now at the core of the Government of Canada bond market, a situation that increases systemic risk. The government's plan to split its budget into operating and capital components has drawn criticism from the Fraser Institute for potentially obscuring financial transparency and allowing for creative accounting that could mask rising debt. With a public service that has grown 40% in the last decade and a trade war-induced recession, according to Oxford economics experts suggest Carney may face the necessity of deep federal spending cuts reminiscent of the Jean Chrétien Liberal government in 1995. The current administration's commitment to ambitious yet seemingly unrealistic goals like making all new passenger vehicles electric by 2035 despite plummeting sales post-subsidy further highlights a disconnect between policy and practical outcomes. Moreover, the Trump administration's broader immigration policies continue to draw scrutiny. Reports indicate that diplomats were informed the Trump refugee program was intended for white people only, a stark revelation that underscores the racial undertones of his administration's approach to global migration and humanitarian aid, adding another layer to the chaos swirling around Washington. As President Trump concludes his Scottish sojourn, which Mr. Kupchan described as a low-risk trip, he is poised to return to the frying pan of Washington. The unresolved Epstein scandal, the ongoing struggle to define and implement trade policies, and the broader implications of his administration's actions on global allies and humanitarian issues will undoubtedly await him. The upcoming official state visit to the UK in September, where he will be hosted by King Charles, suggests that the intertwining of personal brand, political strategy, and international diplomacy will continue to define this presidency, with consequences that ripple across economies and geopolitical landscapes. The question remains whether the delicate balance between personal pursuits and pressing national and international challenges can be maintained, or if the domestic chaos will increasingly overshadow the president's foreign engagements.